God bless everyone. I am Tago Amera and I'm here to discuss about my report, the ethical requirements. Based on Harris' view, to prescribe acting in accordance with a universal moral principle from which, in conjunction with statement specifying one's belief concerning the relevant facts, the judgment can be derived. So, Harris' theory of prescriptivism starts with the idea that moral judgments are not just expressions of individual preferences or feelings, but rather they have a universal moral principle behind them. This universal moral principle is what Harris called the prescriptive universalizability principle, a principle that prescribes acting according to a moral rule that can be universally applied. In essence, Harris' theory emphasizes the importance of having a universal moral principle as a basis of ethical decision-making. This principle is not arbitrary but rather is based on a rational analysis of the moral relevant feature of the situation. By following the process, individual can arrive at moral judgment that are objective, consistent, and applicable to all. So in turn, determine whether one can prescribe acting in accordance with the universal principle is to determine whether one would actually choose to perform the action if one knew that one would have to play, in a series of possible words, otherwise identical to the actual world, the role of each person, including oneself, who would be affected. So, by imagining oneself in the shoes of all individuals involved in the situations, one can evaluate the moral permissibility of a particular action. This is now known as the Rawlsian veil of ignorance. The idea is that if we remove all knowledge of our individual circumstances, such as our social status, talents, and personal preferences, we can make a fair and impartial judgment about what is right or wrong. As the veil of ignorance approach, where one eliminates any bias or personal interest in the decision-making process. Essentially, the individual must ask themselves whether they would still make the same decision if they did not know who they were in the situation and how it would personally benefit or harm them. If the decision aligns with universal moral principle that would benefit everyone even if they were in different rules, then it is permissible to prescribe that action as a universal principle. However, if the decision only benefits a specific group of individuals, it cannot be considered universal and therefore not permissible. Overall, this approach emphasizes the importance of fairness and impartiality in making ethical decisions. Reason and impartiality. The ultimate basis for ethics is clear. Human behavior has consequences for the welfare of others. We are capable of acting toward others in such a way as to increase or decrease the quality of their lives. We are capable of helping or harming. What is more, we are theoretically capable of understanding when we are doing the one and when the other. So, ethics provides a framework for considering how our actions affect those around us and how to make choices that promote positive outcomes rather than negative ones. Ethics also provides a common foundation for moral values that enable people to work together toward common goals. They add common goals, establish trust and respect, and maintain social order. The idea that human behavior has consequences for the welfare of others implies that we have responsibility to take into account, rooted in the understanding that our behavior towards others can have significant impacts on their well-being, both positively and negatively. As human beings, we have the capacity to make choices and take action that can contribute to greater happiness, health, and prosperity for those around us, or we can engage in behavior that increases suffering, harm, and adversity. Ultimately, the ethical principles that guide our behaviors should be grounded in consideration of other people's interests and the common good. This requires an awareness of our impact on others, an appreciation for the need of perspectives with others, and a willingness to prioritize the well-being and flourishing of others as an essential component of moral decision making. In short, the fundamental basis of ethics is a recognition of our interconnectedness and interdependence as human beings, and the need to act in ways that reflect our shared responsibility for the welfare and flourishing of ourselves and others. What is reason? Reason is the capacity for consciously making sense of things, establishing and verifying facts, applying logic, and changing our justifying practices, institutions, and beliefs based on new or existing informations. It is closely associated with such characteristically human activities as philosophy, science, language, mathematics, and arts, and is normally considered to be a distinguishing ability possessed by humans. So, reason is a crucial aspect of human cognition and is essential for decision-making, problem-solving, and communications. It allows individuals to consider information and evidence, analyze it, and draw logical conclusion. Reason also enables individuals to question existing beliefs and practices and to justify them based on new or existing information. It is a fundamental tool for advancing knowledge and understanding, and it's closely linked with key human activities such as evaluate arguments and draw conclusion based on logic and evidence. Reasoning also enables individuals to challenge and revise existing beliefs and practices based on new information and experience, leading to progress and innovation. It is a fundamental aspect of human intelligence and contributes to various domains of human endeavor, including science, technology, philosophy, and the arts. Reasoning helps individuals to understand the world around them and create meaning out of their experiences, leading to personal growth and development. Overall, reason is a crucial cognitive ability that enables humans to function and thrive in a complex and changing environments. The proper role of ethical reasoning is to highlight acts of two kinds: those which enhance the well-being of others, that warrant our praise, and those that harm or diminish the well-being of others and thus warrant our criticisms. Ethical reasoning is a process of evaluating and making decisions about the right course of action based on ethical principles and values. It involves deliberations, evaluations, and reflection on moral issues and dilemmas. Ethical reasoning helps individuals to identify and assess different moral perspectives, evaluate the consequences for their actions, and make ethical decisions that align with their values and beliefs. The importance of ethical reasoning lies in sound justifications of actions and decisions based on moral principles such as honesty, respect, fairness, and justice. The proper role of ethical reasoning is to ensure that individuals and organizations act in a way that is morally right and justifiable. It helps individuals to consider the impact of their actions on others and to make decisions that promote the well-being of all concerned. Ethical reasoning also helps individuals to develop a sense of responsibility and accountability, which is essential for creating a just and fair society. In conclusion, reasoning is an essential aspect of human cognition and is critical in the fields of philosophy, ethics, and logic. Ethical reasoning plays a particularly important role in guiding decision-making process, ensuring that individuals and organizations act in accordance with moral principles and values and promote the well-being of all. Predicting consequences. Moral reasoning involves predicting the consequences of an action before we act. There are always consequences when we take the action we think is right and when we are trying to be good persons, and usually this includes unintended as well as intended outcomes. When the likely beneficial outcomes of acting and ethical consumption seem to outweigh the likely adverse outcomes, then predicting consequences confirms our presumptions. In doing ethics, we look rules about duty and right, and at stories about character and relationships to construct a presumption and then test this presumption by predicting what we do know and don't know about likely consequences of acting on it. Our moral reasoning and gives us the confidence to act on our ethical presumption. However, it is important to note that moral reasoning is not just about predicting consequences. It also involves considering the ethical principle and values that guide our actions, as well as the moral obligation and responsibilities we have to others. In addition, moral reasoning takes into account the moral implications of our actions on different stakeholders and the broader society. In some cases, the consequences of our actions may not be clear-cut, and we may need to make difficult trade-offs between competing ethical considerations. In such situations, moral reasoning requires careful analysis and consideration of all relevant factors. Ultimately, moral reasoning helps us to make informed ethical decisions, and it plays a critical role in promoting fairness, justice, and human well-being in our personal and professional lives. Impartiality. Impartiality, also called even-handedness or fair-mindedness, is a principle of justice holding that decisions should be based on objective criteria rather than on the basis of bias, prejudice, or referring the benefit to a one person over another for improper reasons. Yes, that is correct. Impartiality is an important principle of justice, refers to the idea that the decisions and actions should be made based on objective criteria, without bias or favoritism towards any particular individual or group. This means that individuals should not be treated differently based on their personal characteristics such as race, gender, religions, or social status, but rather based on the facts and evidence at hand. Impartiality helps to ensure fairness and equality in the decision-making process, and it is an important principle in many areas of law and governance. Impartiality makes no discrimination as to nationality, race, religious belief, class, or political opinions. It endeavors to relieve the suffering of individuals, being guided solely by their needs, and to give priority to the most urgent cases of distress. Impartiality is a core principle of humanitarianism, which aims to provide assistance to people in need, regardless of their nationality, race, religious belief, class, or political opinions. This principle ensures that aid is delivered based on the needs of the affected individual rather than any other factors. Impartiality ensures that humanitarian aid is provided equally to all those in need, without any bias or discrimination. It means that the most vulnerable and marginalized individuals are given priority regardless of their background or circumstances. This principle also ensures that aid is delivered without any political or ideological agenda. Humanitarian organizations operate independently of any political or government structures, and their sole focus is to provide assistance to those in need. Overall, impartiality is crucial in ensuring that humanitarian aid is delivered effectively and efficiently, and that it reaches those who need it most. It is a fundamental principle that guides the work of humanitarian organizations and helps to ensure that aid is provided in a fair and equitable manner. Consequences of the fundamental principle of impartiality. 1. It establishes one of its key values, non-discrimination, which is one of the most important elements of all aspects of the protection of the human being. Human rights law, humanitarian law, refugee law. Yes, non-discrimination is a fundamental value in all aspects of the protection of human beings, including human rights law, humanitarian law, and refugee law. Non-discrimination means that all individuals should be treated equally without discrimination based on race, ethnicity, gender, religion, nationality, or any other characteristic. Non-discrimination is enshrined in many international human rights treaties, and it is cornerstone of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It is important to ensure that non-discrimination is upheld in all areas of life to protect the rights and dignity of all individuals. 2. Although the need to enjoy the confidence of all is mentioned about the principle of neutrality, this also applies to the principle of impartiality. Only an impartiality action can give the image of an organization that can be trusted by people to assisted or protected. Certainly, in the context of international relations, neutrality and impartiality are related but distinct concepts. Neutrality refers to a state's decision to not take the sides in a conflict between other states or parties. A neutral state maintains its independence and does not provide military or economic assistance to either side of the conflict. The principle of neutrality is often associated with a state's duty to respect the sovereignty of other states and to avoid interfering in their internal affairs. Impartiality, on the other hand, refers to the behavior of actors such as mediators or humanitarian organizations who may become involved in a conflict, but who strive to remain neutral in the conflict itself. An impartial actor is one that take sides or have a take in the outcomes of conflict, but rather seek to promote a fair and just resolution to the conflict that take into account the needs and interests of all parties involved. While the two concepts are related, neutrality is more about the state's position on a conflict, whereas impartiality is more about the behavior of actors who may become involved in a conflict. Nonetheless, both principles share the idea of not favoring one side over another in order to preserve a perception of fairness and integrity in international relations. Impartiality in its true sense requires that subjective distinction be set aside. To illustrate the difference between the two nations, a national society that refuses to provide its services to a specific group of people because of their ethnic origins fails to observe the rule of non-discrimination, whereas a national society of staff member who in the exercise of his functions favors a friend by giving him better treatment than that given to others, contravenes the principle of impartiality. You are correct that impartiality requires setting aside subjective distinctions and treating everyone equally and without bias. The example you provide illustrates the difference between discrimination and impartiality. Discrimination involves treating people differently based on their ethnicity, race, gender, religions, or other personal characters that are irrelevant to the service of treatment they receive. Discrimination is a violation of the rule of non-discrimination, which requires the equal treatment of all individuals. Impartiality, on the other hand, requires treating everyone equally regardless of personal relationship or biases. And the example of you provided in a national society staff member who gives preferential treatment to a friend violates the principle of impartiality because they are not treating everyone equally. In summary, impartiality requires treating everyone equally without favoritism or discrimination based on personal characteristic or relationships. And that's all. Thank you.